Welcome to Intercultural Communication. Intercultural communication is seen as a dying skill, but with the diversity increasing not only in the United States, but also in the world, it's important for members of society to be able to communicate and understand the values and cultures different from their own. Throughout this course, I have researched the Hispanic and Latino American culture. In this video, I will touch base about all aspects of communication with other cultures and the Hispanic Latino American culture. This topic of intercultural communication and communication challenges will cover stereotyping, ethnocentrism, individualism, collectivism, high power distance, and communication obstruction. The textbook describes stereotyping as a categorization of individuals because of certain qualities or characteristics others have seen or perceived of a certain culture or racial group. These stereotypes cultivate from real-world situations while distorting social perceptions of other cultures. Stereotypes are formed because individuals need a boost of self-esteem, and when they create this self-esteem, they feel better about their own culture. The textbook defines ethnocentrism as putting an individual's own group as a central aspect of their values while creating negative attitude towards other cultures or outgroups. Most of the time, ethnocentrism is seen negatively, but a lot of the times it brings positivity to cultures and survival, unity, traditionalism, collaboration, faithfulness, efficiency. High ethnocentrists maintain views of cultures in a negative way and believe other groups to be below them. Low ethnocentrists value the beliefs and equality of other groups and cultures to their own. So there is different positivities and negativities of ethnocentrism. A good positive side of ethnocentrism is it brings those cultural groups together. A negative side is it really does affect the intercultural communication between groups. Kuhn and Kemmelmeyer describe individualistic cultures as emphasizing self-determination, self-interest, and self-actualization. They describe collectivist cultures, and those highlight the importance of group goals and traditional authority. Compared to individualistic cultures, the Hispanic Latino Americans are one of the three largest minority groups to actually encourage and value collectivism. They share family values and friends, and they believe these values build their family relations and lead to better satisfaction in life and health. So that is why the Hispanic Latino Americans are such a collectivist culture. They also value interdependence, which means they decide things as a family. As defined by the textbook, power distance is the extent to which members of a culture expect and accept that power as unequal and unequally distributed. In smaller power distances, family members are almost always treated equally and decisions are made together. So this higher power distance goes along with the collectivism of the Hispanic Latino culture. Cultures who have larger power distances embrace the inequalities in their group as well as desire them. Garza and Watts is another article I have used and utilized throughout this course, and they describe high power distance in the Hispanic and Latino culture, and they talk about the children and how they are expected to cooperate and behave, and any deviation from that is not tolerated. They also value obedience and good behavior while respecting the authority figures as well as respecting the authority figures in the community. This next section is language and culture. Language and culture are two things that make this world go around. They define a person's identity, how they view the world, how they communicate their needs and feelings, and so much more. There are many language barriers in this world that cause confusion between cultures as well as misunderstandings. Their language is what influences their culture and defines who they are as an individual, a family, and as a group. It is truly hard for one to understand language and its linguistic meaning. Language has so many meanings, and they can include verbal, image, material meanings, and also the meanings of the way humans operate and have social roles. Language says a lot about a certain culture and the way they live their daily lives. Their language is the gateway to understanding their values and how they share their worldview with cultures and other individuals. Languages shape the way an individual thinks about time, space, objects, and colors. Most individuals would actually think a certain culture is what influences the language, when in fact, most of the time, it is exactly the opposite. Our idea of what belongs to the realm of reality is given for us in the language that we use. The concepts we have settled for us, the form of the experience, we have the word. What this means is our language defines our culture and how we use our values to live our daily lives. The language of the Hispanic and Latino Americans support their identity and culture and give another look to others of their values and their daily lives. There are so many Hispanic American families that want their children and their students to learn English so they can conform to society and be able to communicate just a little bit more. There are schools now working with Hispanic students to actually focus on their academics and fit English in at the right moment. The school I work for actually has a program and has been a huge success for the Hispanic students in our school. It gives them the encouragement to work hard on their academics while feeling comfortable with learning English at their own pace. Nonverbal communication. This part of intercultural communication is extremely important. Nonverbal communication is a variety of different things across many different cultures. Verbal communication is easily understood, but nonverbal communication is difficult to learn because it is extremely different in each culture. Nonverbal communication is non-linguistic, which means it uses kinesics, proxemics, haptics, oculesics, chronemics, paralinguistics, olfactics, and the physical appearance of a certain person. Through this next topic, we will talk about all of those aspects of nonverbal communication and the do's and don'ts of the Hispanic and Latino culture and how to successfully communicate with them nonverbally. Here are some things we need to know first before getting further into aspects of nonverbal communication. The first thing is that nonverbal communication can be different in the public eye versus privacy of one's own home. Also, different settings can influence different behaviors of nonverbal communication, so it is key to be aware of the surroundings when using this type of communication. Cruz defines kinesics in his article as the body movements and facial expressions one uses to communicate emotions and words without speaking. Gestures add emphasis to what a person is saying, so that is why we need to use caution when using gestures because they might look okay in one culture but be disrespectful in another culture. Gestures and facial expressions were not meant to be universal. They tend to be culture specific. Gestures and facial expressions can be confusing. So an example of this is if I shake my head yes, it could mean no in a different culture. Cruz defines proxemics as the study of space between two people. The proxemics of a certain culture are important to study if traveling to a different country because the amount of space an individual considers personal varies from country to country. In the United States, a typical space between individuals ranges from about 4 to 12 feet in social situations. The Hispanic Latino Americans actually consider their space between individuals 8 to 18 inches, which is much shorter than the United States and what most people are comfortable with. Haptics is the nonverbal study of touch within a culture. As a person grows and matures, their culture teaches them what kind of touch is inappropriate and what kind of touches are appropriate in certain situations. Hispanic and Latino women may kiss each other on the cheek as a symbol for hello if they are close in a relationship, and Latino men may touch each other on the shoulder while talking, hug each other on greeting, or shake each other's hand when saying hello. Cheney and Martin describe nonverbal communication paralinguistics as how something is said at the rate, volume, and the accent in which something is said. With the way one culture speaks may not be the same in another culture. For example, a low tone of voice when speaking may indicate a person who is more compassionate, while an increased rate of speech could indicate impatience or even worried. The Hispanic and Latino culture have the habit of speaking softly. They associate this with low volume of voice, with good manners, and the essence of being educated. The paralanguage associated with certain cultures may indicate what type of emotions they are feeling, along with their cultural, regional, and educational background. Chronemics is the nonverbal communication of colors. Colors play a huge role in the communications of feelings and symbolism for a variety of cultures. Just like all of the other aspects of nonverbal communication, colors and their meanings vary with every culture. Colors can be associated with nationality, emotions, and moods. Caution should be recognized when giving flowers to a different culture than your own. Different cultures have different symbolisms for flowers in their country, and some of them can mean terrible things. For an example, white lilies can be seen to lift superstitious spells in the Hispanic and Latino culture, while being used for funerals in France. In nonverbal communication, the way a person dresses and their physical appearance actually says a lot about their personality and their culture. This important aspect of nonverbal communication can display how a person respects themselves and who they are as a culture and an individual person. Dress and appearance can be seen as an important aspect of nonverbal communication in the business setting by giving an image of a person's position, company, and how they feel about their career. Chronemics can be paired with the way a person dresses as well. Many individuals from other cultures don't wear their colors of their nation's flag because they see this as disrespectful and a desecration of the flag. Also, the type of fabric one can wear can say a lot about their personality and even their position in society. Oculesics is nonverbal communication associated with the eyes of a person. This type of nonverbal communication can be seen as more personal and, like many of the other aspects of nonverbal communication, varies with each culture. In the United States, eye contact can be portrayed as attentiveness, respect, truthfulness, and self-confidence. A lack of eye contact or avoiding eye contact can be seen as insecure, disrespectful, shy, and have low self-esteem. In the Hispanic and Latino American culture, a lack of eye contact should be seen as respect and confident. Eye contact, in fact, can be seen as challenging or angry to a particular person in this culture. Higher authorities in the culture will make direct eye contact, but the subordinates they are speaking with will look away frequently and allow their eyes to wander out of respect. Olfactics is the nonverbal communication of smell. Each person has his or her own smell, especially in different cultures. Individuals from other cultures may react positively or negatively to smells from other cultures. One smell can remain in memory of another person long after their interaction has ended. Hygiene, what a person eats, and scents applied to the skin play an important role in how you smell. If visiting a different culture or country, it is important to apply their practices of hygiene to make them feel more comfortable and attentive during interaction. This is a nonverbal communication brochure that I created with my research project. So gestures, don't use a beckoning gesture as waving someone towards you. Hispanic Americans find this offensive. Using thumbs down is considered vulgar. Avoid placing your hands in your pockets. This can be seen as rude. Um, the space in between each other. Don't pull away or back up when having a conversation. This can be considered unfriendly or even rude. Touch. Don't pull away from a touch on the shoulder. They can see this as reactions of rudeness. How to speak. Don't speak in a loud tone or voice or even too quickly. This can portray that you are angry, worried, or impatient. Don't give Hispanic, Latino Americans individual yellow flowers. Yellow flowers in the Hispanic Latino culture mean death, so that is definitely something to avoid. Some other things we might want to not do if we were to visit the Hispanic culture in Mexico is not wear shorts in Mexico City. Shorts are seen as inappropriate and they don't support the femininity of the Hispanic, Latino, and women. Eye contact, don't use direct eye contact when speaking with someone from the Hispanic, Latino culture. This can be seen as disrespectful, intimidating, and challenging to a person, especially one in high authority. Smell, definitely use caution when using your familiar scents because having close interactions, they can be overwhelming for the culturally diverse people that are not used to it. What can we do to nonverbally communicate successfully with the Hispanic American culture? A person can break eye contact frequently when speaking to make them feel more comfortable. Stand close during conversation to avoid the feeling of being rude. Touch their arm or pat their back to make them feel more comfortable during a conversation. If you're attending a business meeting, a skirted business suit for a woman would be the best option. Use low tones of voice when speaking to not seem too anxious or come across as angry. And respect the individual to make decisions as a family. But most importantly, be yourself and respect the culture you are interacting with. Cultural conflict styles and cultural conflict management. Cultural conflict can be seen in almost every environment: schools, businesses, society, even in your own home. Cultural conflict is not always negative, though. There are many positives to come out of different situations. Experience, understanding, and patience for the different views are just some of the positive skills learned by being involved in cultural conflict. In this section, we will talk about the Hispanic and Latino cultural conflict styles and maybe how to read into the situation and understand their cultural mindset. Behaviors come naturally to any student or child or individual, regardless of their culture. In the Hispanic and Latino culture, parents actually expect their children to study hard, cooperate with the teacher, and follow rules to be successful. Many cultures do not have the knowledge to know what behaviors are expected, and that can be an issue when we don't know what the underlying problem is. Research was done, and the parents of the Hispanic and Latino culture believe it is not acceptable to perform academics below ability level. They also don't agree with problematic behavior in the classroom. So these are important aspects to understand when dealing with cultural conflict. We don't understand why they are behaving the way they are or why the conflict has risen. Knowing how to read a student or person and break down the conflict into the underlying problem is a great way to know how to diminish the situation of cultural conflict. When these conflicts arrive, it can be one of three reasons: denial that a problem or conflict exists, they are avoiding the problem, or the lack of focus on one problem or conflict at a time. Some examples for the Hispanic and Latino culture for cultural conflict could be culture shock, family separation, and unfamiliar cultural expectations. Understanding empathy and culture acknowledgement have been touched on in this video. and give a better idea of how to understand and handle different situations with the Hispanic Latino American culture. Like I said before, each conflict is going to have a different scenario in the real world, and it's important to read into the situation, learn how the individual feels, thinks, and acknowledge the reason why they are having these issues in the first place. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you guys learned what I have learned over the last 7 weeks about intercultural communication and how to communicate and understand different cultures in this diverse society.